The Bears are 2-0 in preseason, and I don't want to spend too much time going back and talking about Thursday because there's a lot of things in front of us. But I will tell you that those people on the ESPN broadcast, oh, those haters had all their cliff notes ready just to destroy the Bears. And you know what? Oh, I'm sorry, Dan Orlovsky. It didn't go your way because the Bears were out there crushing it. Oh, you can make your little quips about Justin Fields was running for his life and blah, blah, blah. The thing is, this Bears team's been looking pretty crisp, pretty sharp in preseason. But you know what? We were going to have a full house tonight to talk about all this and to look forward for the Bears 2022 season. So, Sammy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Tuesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. And let's go ahead and bring in our co-host for the evening. She's been crushing it. And she's back in Chicago. Carmen Vitali of the Draft Network is joining us from Chicago. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully and very, very glad to be back in my own bed, in my own apartment, looking at this gorgeous view. So.
And you made your flight, obviously. That was worrying me. You were like, oh, I got to leave in 20 minutes for the airport. And you still had another podcast to do. And by the way, a quick reminder to everybody, there's a daily podcast on the Draft Network featuring Carmen. How can people find that?
It's on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. It's called TDN Daily. Please like, rate, and subscribe. You would be doing me a huge favor if you do so. So please do that.
Yeah, do us a solid if you could. And it's also by as a matter of fact, it's also really good. So you'll go out there, you'll learn something. Listen to this podcast. Daily podcasts are the way to go, even though we do this twice a week. But, that's still the daily podcast. Get all your information, and there you go. I got also a reminder, speaking of podcasts, the Sick Podcast appears on AM 1530 WCKG, which is the Chicago home of the Sick Podcast. You can hear us every Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. Central. Following us, it's the No Name Pod with Olin Kreutz, Jason McKee. A cover two of Bears coverage like no other. So make sure you're liking and subscribing to all those available podcasts. And Carmen, I'm excited. I'm always excited. I always look forward to the show. But joining us tonight is we have a former national champion, a former all-worldly. Like he was part of the Amsterdam Admirals. He was a member. I know he played for the Montreal Alouettes, a team that I love because they used to have a lot of former Cal State Fullerton guys. And, by the way, he's the son of the greatest football player who ever lived. So without further ado, let's just bring him on. Jarrett Payton's with us. We're very excited. That part of it. But national champion. I forgot a national champion. Did I not say national champion? I said national champion. Okay.
Yeah, you did. Yes, I was all NFL.
All NFL Europe, right?
NFL Europe, yeah, I was, man. So I got a chance to tote the rock a little bit. Carm, Adam, what's going on? Both of you, man. Chi-Town representing. Dude, I said it in the tweet last night. It's going to be fire if we're going to sit here and talk Bears right now. Let's go.
Yeah.
Wait, I think I'm just putting something together. Were you part of that championship team at Miami that was coached by Dennis Erickson?
Nah, I was.
Okay.
It was. No, so we went from Butch Davis to Larry Coker. We won it in 2001. So, just the greatest college football team of all time. I mean, sorry. Adam, come on, man. Adam.
I'm thinking. Is that Sean Taylor, right?
Yes. Sean Taylor, Ed Reed. Just think about the first round draft picks. Bryant McKinney, Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow Jr. I mean, dude, it was Najee Davenport. I mean, we can keep going. Vince Wilfork. I mean, we can keep going. Philip Buchanan. We had a bunch of first-round picks, and I know Alabama and some of those other schools, that USC team, especially the one that lost against Texas, you can put all those together. I just don't know if there's a a better group of talent that not only performed in college football, but also went to the pros and dominated at their position. Andre Johnson, let's not forget about him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit. There's a lot of merit to that because as I think of, and I think that people dismiss Matt Leinart for how good of a college quarterback he was, but he was legitimately an excellent quarterback. And of course, Reggie Bush and Lendale White. But defensively, I think that's where you guys have it for sure.
Yeah.
Sean Taylor and Ed Reed.
Oh, yeah. It's Wolford. Hold up. DJ Williams and Jonathan Vilma too playing linebacker. Come on.
I forgot Vilma was on that team too. Okay, yeah. Why did I even I tried to stand up for my friends. I would consider myself a friend of Reggie Bush. So I gotta at least put up a little bit of a roadblock, but I'm like, yeah, that's kind of tough to beat. That's tough to beat. But how are you doing? So how has everything been going with you? I know that I wanted to ask. So I know that Jim McMahon had his birthday the other day. And I always love when you call him Uncle Jim and everything like that. Do you really recall, because you were born in what, you're in the 80s, baby.
Yeah.
So you were born in 1980. Do you really remember the 85 team, like everything that was going on with that?
No, I don't remember the whole 85 team, but I do remember bits and pieces. I just remember how crazy Chicago was at that time. Like, I've been here now being older and going through the championships of the Bulls and the 6 championships and some of the Stanley Cup championships for the Blackhawks. And I've seen a lot, man, with the World Series in 16. I was here for the White Sox. I was in Miami at the time with the White Sox, but still – there's people in this town talk about 85 like it's something totally, totally different. And the vibe was totally different because this is a Bears town. You guys know it. And, you could be split with baseball teams, basketball and Jordan, even though he's the GOAT, I get it. But when it comes here, it's about orange and blue, man. And we bleed it here in Chicago. So to be a part of that, I remember bits and pieces, but man, my dad was also bigger than life at that time. So like for us, we were stuck in the house a lot because we couldn't really go anywhere. We couldn't go to eat. We couldn't go like anywhere because he literally was like getting mobbed at the mall, at Woodfield Mall. We'd walk in and there'd be 100 people around him and he wouldn't be able to move. And I just remember those moments. But I do have to tell you something about Uncle Jim McMahon. Mm-hmm. If you would have told me when my dad passed in 99 that I would have all these uncles that would look after me. And the ones that have been so close are my dad's best friend, who's Matsui. My dad basically left him in charge of, his image and likeness and the estate. Like those two, their relationship, we talk about Brian's song. There needs to be a movie made of my dad and Matsui because their relationship, they were truly best friends. And then you would have told me that Jim McMahon would have been one of those people that would look after me, call me, text me, direct message me. I would have told you the punky QB, you're crazy, dude. That dude's crazy. There's no way. I talk to Jim at least once a month when he's here. We go out to lunch, and he's the one that initiates it. Like, bro, you didn't pick up my phone call. Like, yo, we get Matt. We're going to lunch. And so I'm just very, very grateful to have all these uncles who have looked after me, and especially Jim and Matsui. Those guys not only are uncles, but they've also taught me a lot of life lessons, and they're always there for me when I need them.
I love that. And that's always what you want to think when you are watching it as a fan from afar. You want that to happen. You were like, I hope they're really close. And so that makes me very happy. And it's funny, you talk about how big of a town Chicago is. And I know that the 2016 celebration was huge. The Bears celebration is going to make that Cubs parade look like, I don't know, Collective Soul at the Sandwich Festival by comparison, because it's going to be so insane. And it's why people still talk about 85. And, and I'll use my dad as an example, who passed away a couple years after yours. My dad was born in 1927. So he saw every major Bears player who ever lived up until that point. And, he could have been a Gale Sayers person, a Red Grain or whatever. It was always your dad. It was always your dad. And my dad was an adult. Like, he was an adult male in the 70s, in the 80s. Like, he was on in his years, but it was Walter Payton. Oh, no dispute. And when I was a kid and I'd try to be a smart guy, and I'd be like, I kind of like Neil Anderson. He'd be like, go to your room. Go to your room right now. No disrespect to Neil Anderson, who I still love. But it's always Walter Payton, and I think that you're absolutely right. Everybody loves the Chicago Bears. How do you feel about the team right now? What do you feel about the direction the team is moving in? What have you seen through the first 2 weeks of the preseason?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag here, right? Because I'm different than I think most fans in how they were thinking. I was one that was preaching change from the last regime to this regime. So for me, when I was hoping for change, I knew that there was going to probably be some bumps in the road. And the way that this organization and this roster was constructed, the way that Ryan Pace left it, I knew that whoever was coming in was going to have some issues and it was going to take some time to be able to rebuild. I know Bears fans, we all want to win right now. It's always about like, okay, let's get this thing. We got pieces here. And it's always been really a strong defense. And then next thing you know, trying to find pieces on the offensive side of the ball. But for me coming into this season, once Poles was hired, once Eberflus was hired, I started doing my digging on both guys to people around the league that I know, people that coached with them, that played for them, and had those conversations and try to figure out who both of these men were. And everything that I heard was positive. And so when the season kind of was getting underway and they were going through OTAs, I was open for change and I'm open for long-term success. I think in Chicago, one thing that I've always seen with Bears fans is that we always want to take that masking tape or the duct tape and put it over these holes and hopefully that we can kind of patch it together. I'm tired of that, man. I'm tired of that. I want to break this thing down and build it all the way back up and build it into something that it should be. And what it should be is when we talk about being one of the founding franchises of the NFL, we should be in that conversation every single year, if not winning a championship, but being in that discussion of being in the postseason and the playoffs and not just getting knocked off in the first round, talking about actually truly making a run. And so having conversations with Ryan Poles and seeing what he was all about, I have this belief that he's going to do it the right way. And just his connection with Kansas City and being there and seeing what he was a part of, he knows what it takes. Most of the time I say things like this and next thing you know, they show up on my Twitter feed like 5 years later and go, you didn't know what you were talking about. But I really do. I truly believe in Poles that just by looking at this past draft, the direction that everybody thought they were going to go with those 2 picks in the second round, like, it's Justin. They're going to go get a wide receiver for Justin. That's what everybody was thinking. And he went and got 2 defensive guys that could possibly be super studs, man. Kyler Gordon could be a stud. And all I needed to see was first preseason game with Jaquan Brisker. And I'm just like, this is a football player, dude. And now you look at where the Bears on the other side of the ball and that defensive side of the ball is being constructed. That secondary could be the strength of that defense. And so, and with 2 young guys. So I like the direction where they're going. The only question that I always had was if we're looking at the development of Justin Fields in year 2, and everybody is looking at that. That's the first thing that everybody's watching. How does he do that with maybe not having those household names, especially at the skill position? To me, and an offensive line that still has a lot of work to do, and the way that it's constructed right now, things could change even with that as well. And we've seen it all during camp that it hasn't been consistent. It's moving guys around. It's Tevin Jenkins, Larry Bourne, like trying to figure out what's going to be the kind of the missing pieces. I have a hard time figuring out how to gauge Justin having success in year 2 without having a bunch of wins. I guess you can break it down and you can look at his mechanics and seeing how he's gotten better there in his game. He truly has. That throw to Cole Kmet when he was off the play action boot to be able to flip his hips and throw, you see those little things. And I think Luke Getsy is going to be amazing for him. But as of right now, I think it's watching that development with him and Darnell Mooney and also him and Cole Kmet. And I think them leaning on the running game is going to be huge in figuring out, can David Montgomery put this team on his back and really give them an opportunity? Because I think play action is one thing that we never really saw in that Matt Nagy era. Could that be something that we see here and how take advantage of it, even with Justin's ability to get outside the pocket? And I know they hopefully are going to run that wide stretch game as well, where those boots can not only turn into passes, but also turn into quarterback runs as well, and using what God gave him, and that's the ability to move his feet. So I'm excited, not for the wins and losses this season, but into watching the development of some of these young guys that are here on this roster that were recently drafted, and just see how they progress. Because to me, if you start seeing it there, Poles needs more drafts underneath his belt for this thing to truly turn around, because that's how you win championships. You can go and get free agents. You got to be able to build through the draft for long-term success.
I think it's really interesting too, because that's something that I've thought as well, in that you're not going to have these household names that he's going to be able to throw to. So how much can he develop? But I think you hit the nail on the head with the running game. And Adam and I have talked about that before, and how much that can open something up, especially with a guy like Luke Getsy in charge, who is willing to build around that and build to his players' skill sets versus trying to fit them into a system that he's already established. And what do you see out of David Montgomery? I feel like that's going to, kind of propel this Bears offense, especially when you do have those question marks on the offensive line. That makes things hard for running backs.
Carl, I got to tell you, I'm just glad you brought it up. You brought up one of the issues that I had with that last regime. Why are you have guys, if you're a good football coach, you don't just take your system and say, this is the system, you got to fit in it. It makes no sense whatsoever. If you're a good coach, you find what your players do well and you kind of tailor things around them. And so the stubbornness of Matt Nagy just always, like, as soon as you said it, I got chills down my arms. I was so upset. I've seen what I've seen out of David Montgomery, you guys, and I got to say this about this young man, because, man, being a running back in Chicago has to be hard.
Yeah.
My relationship with guys that have come in and out since, my dad's retired, even like Matt Forte and I, like, we got closer after he left Chicago. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's that stigma of, because of who my dad is and what he did here, that it's hard to live up. But when you look at what a guy like Matt Forte did here in Chicago, man, unbelievable career, and could not only do it in the run game, but also catching out of the backfield as well. Like, he was a dynamic player. So I've always had like different relationships with all the running backs. When I first met David Montgomery at the Bears 100, he was really, really quiet. And I was thinking to myself, man, maybe this is going to be one of those situations again.
Oh, yeah.
And it's blossomed into something that's totally different. I've truly watched him as a person, first and foremost, grow as a person from being a kid that was shy to now being one of the vocal leaders inside of that Bears locker room at Hallis Hall. And then also, too, just being vocal about what he wants and what he expects of himself and the high standard that he puts on his game. And, man, there is nothing that you turn on David Montgomery film, if the hair doesn't stand up on the back of your neck by watching him run and being tough, not giving up. I mean, that was one of the things last year that was exciting to see. For the moment of time you got a chance to see him, was like, holy cow, this young man gets it, man. And I love the way that he runs that outside zone. So patient. Khalil Herbert's he's the exact same in that sense as well. I love how patient both guys are. But to me, David Montgomery is the bell cow. Like, if you want to win, give 32 the ball and let him spin. And, dude, that's where it's going to come off of, because then you're giving opportunities now for these defenses that have 8-9 men in the box. And so some of those household names that we're talking about, especially outside on those receivers, you get a guy like, everybody knows Darnell Mooney. We know him. But the other guys that are trying to make names for themselves as well, gives them opportunity to have that one-on-one coverage. And those are the shots that I think that have been lacking in the Bears offense over the time in that last regime that I'm hopefully getting a chance to see, because, man, that's what you need. You need a guy that can take the pressure off. David Montgomery, to me, is that guy.
That is one of the things that I was, really impressed by when I talked to David Montgomery when I was at Hallis Hall just a few weeks ago. And you talk about the legacy of the Bears running backs, with obviously your dad being number one. But, it's a huge group. I mentioned Neil Anderson. You said Matt Forte. The Kansas Comet was in there. Red Grange, going on and on. It's funny. When I talk about Matt Forte, I always tell the Packers fans, I go, he'd be the best running back in Packers history, but he's maybe top 5 for us, but whatever. It's neither here nor there. I like that David Montgomery, I mentioned hey, we really appreciate you carrying the torch. And he was like, oh, I haven't done anything yet. Please don't, the humbleness of him, because I agree with you. I think he's a great running back already. I think that, he's had to work, he hasn't had a lot to work with, but I thought that he's pretty much made himself a Bears running back, but he's not taking it too lightly. So I always appreciate that. I do.
Him. But I also, it's tough because you look at where he's at in his career, right? I mean,
yeah.
At some point, you got to start thinking about long term and where you're going to go. And nobody's paying running backs anymore, man. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. You can go get a guy in the 3rd, 4th round that fits your system. I don't know, though. It's tough for me because he's one of those guys that's been the heart and soul. And guys that I talk to in that organization, they feed off of his energy, the way that he comes out and he handles his business, his work on the football field, man. That's hard to duplicate, and when you don't have it. And so, I think the running back room as a whole, I think they're good. I think they're good at that position. So it's funny. There's only one football, so you got to find a way to be able to do this and keep everybody happy. But for me, 32 has got to be that guy that's kind of carrying the load for this ball club.
Do you think about him possibly moving on? I think he would be one of those guys, because I know Forte was like this, where he would not go to Green Bay. Was Jarrett Payton like this? Sammy, do we have any evidence? Was Jarrett ever going to go to Green Bay by any chance? Do we have that? Oh, here we go. I will read this quote. When I, and I'm talking about you, Jarrett, when I was released by the Titans, the Pack called my agent to see if I would come in for a workout for the practice squad. I turned it down because there was no way Payton was going to be in the back of in a Green Bay jersey. This is why we love you. This is the legacy.
Legend.
Can I tell you? First of all, that post went crazy, and then I did that thing on Instagram where you get drafted by a team, and it was the Packers, and I was like, I kept saying no, and it was a reel. It's at 600,000 views, and Packer fans are still mad at me, talking trash, saying you shouldn't. We didn't want you anywhere. You're just coming here to be a camp body. Can I just say this? And I'm going to say it on your podcast because I've been waiting to say this to people. For those people that don't know my story, you need to understand my story. I did not start playing football till my junior year in high school. So I knew nothing about the game, didn't know. Yes, my dad was Walter Payton. I knew nothing about the game. So it wasn't like, oh, Dad, let's sit and watch Monday Night Football. I knew nothing when I put on the helmet for the first time. My junior year, at one game, we were doing a 2-minute drill. We're going down, clock is running. We're trying to get down and score a touchdown. And I remember the clock hitting zeros. Because I played soccer, normally the whistle would blow and it'd be over. And I thought that the game was over, and I still had a play to throw the ball. And I turned around, and 2 dudes came and hit me and dragged me down to the ground. I knew nothing, Adam. I knew nothing about the game, okay? So for all these people that are talking about, Packer fans that are coming on to my story saying, well, you didn't do half what your dad would do. You were garbage, this and that. I got 55 offers playing 2 years, not knowing the game, okay? If you didn't know, do your homework. I would have made more than my dad ever made playing soccer if people don't know who I was at soccer. Like, do your homework first before you creep onto my stories and all this other stuff, talking all this trash. I just had to say that. Shout out to all my Bears fans out there. I love you guys.
I was gonna say, you got an entire city though ready to throw hands for you.
I know.
Like, ready to throw, and much bigger than Green Bay. Are we kidding?
And it was the, you know what the opportunity is to go to Canada, man. Like, Montreal had my rights, and I had no clue about the CFL at all either. And if I could do it all over again, honestly, I would go straight to the CFL from Miami, because I had so much fun in Montreal and Toronto playing in the CFL. To all my people up in Canada that I still talk to, that still embrace me, I appreciate them so much, man. Like, loonies and toonies up there spending my money. Like, it just was the greatest time of my life. And so, but, you know, getting a chance to play the 14 games that I did with the Titans, going over to NFL Europe. Listen, football took me all over the world. So I'm very, very blessed for every opportunity. And I said that at the end of the post. Like, I'm grateful for the phone call. It just, for me at that time, there's no way that I could be sitting here at 41 and people coming up to me in Chicago, and I'm entrenched in Chicago sports being like, so what was it like playing for the Packers? I'd be like, dude, no,
can't do it. We barely let Jim get away with it. So
it's a good story to be able to say, no, I wasn't, because like those images would have lasted forever too. The word, like the last name Payton in a green and gold jersey. You were so right. There was no way that could have ever happened.
And let me just tell you this real quick, because my dad was, I do remember this, because Adam was asking me about remembering 85. The one thing I do remember is how intense my dad was around the house when it was Packer week. Like, he didn't talk a lot. He was super focused. He was lasered in, and like, we'd be eating dinner and no one would be talking because he would be so, and that's where a lot of my anger for the Packers came from, because that week, it just made my house super quiet, because my dad knew what that meant to Chicago Bears fans. He knew what it meant to the city, man. So he never wanted to be on that losing end. And so he always wanted to make sure that it don't matter how the season was going, that he made a statement in that Packer game.
Yeah, and the kids will never know. These kids running around in their Aaron Rodgers jerseys. You don't know who Charles Martin is. The most disrespectful play in NFL history. And that Packers team was garbage in the 80s. Like, I want them to go back to the 80s. And I remember my dad would always say stuff like, we didn't even care about the Packers in the 80s. It's all about Washington, and it was about Frisco. And my dad still, he hated Bill Walsh so much for the Guy McIntyre thing. He's like, that's where Ditka got the idea about putting Perry in the backfield, and it started a chain of events. And it's like, okay, Dad, calm down. We don't need to talk about this. You won the Super Bowl. But it's just funny the way all that stuff spirals. So it is ingrained though. And again, the Packers would have tried to hand you a 34 jersey. They would have done their dumb little franchise would have done that, and it's disrespectful. And but again, it's funny, because I look at your career and I look at the thing in Miami. Like, obviously, you went to a school that had a crowded running back room. We talked about it before with Davenport, with Frank Gore, a lot of great players. You could have played at North Carolina or whatever, and go on to Illinois, whatever, Northwestern. But you also it's a good career, not trying to butter you up. Like, it's a pretty good career. You won a college national championship. You got to play in NFL Europe, which is awesome. You got to go to Canada. I am a Cal State Fullerton alumni. I met a guy named Mike Pringle, who was I believe he played for the Alouettes too.
Yeah.
And he was telling us stories. We're at a basketball game. He's telling us stories. I'm like, God, the Canadian Football League sounds awesome. So, I mean,
like, soon as you got off the field after post game, there was coolers of Molson on ice, man. So it was it was just totally different, and I had a great time. You said something. You said something disrespectful, and it brought something to my attention. And I want to throw this to you guys real quick, because I know you're probably going to ask me. Man, Roquan Smith was talking about that disrespect, man, when it came to contract negotiations. What were your two thoughts about how this whole thing kind of played itself out to where we are right now?
I mean, I think, and you would know better than me because you've been in these buildings as a player. I've been in these buildings as, someone that's a staffer. But I mean, when these negotiations are going through, I think there is an understanding. There is a level of understanding that like this is business, but then there's also football. And the obligation that Roquan Smith, I don't even want to say obligation, but like the love that he has for his teammates kind of kept him going because he was, from all the reports, he was still in the building. He was still very engaged. He was helping out the rest of his teammates. He had no, thoughts of even deserting them and was able to compartmentalize, okay, that's business. I'm going to take care of this, but I'm not going to let that affect my relationships within this building. So like in a weird way, because I've been through this or I've seen this from other players as they're going through negotiations for extensions and stuff like that when I was with the Bucks, in that like they act pretty normal, like in the building, like within the bubble of Hallis Hall, like you don't really feel like the weight of what maybe the media decides to put on it or, the constant like dialogue that they have on it, because you're just focused on doing your job and you're still focused on that. And for everything that we heard, Roquan was still very much dialed into learning the new playbook, learning the new defense, getting to know his, the teammates, his coaches, all that kind of stuff. And maybe it was kind of blown a little bit up more in the media, but like him saying, like being very transparent, which is, I think, where it comes into play that he doesn't have an agent, because if you have an agent, you have an agent in your ear going, don't say that. He did not have that, but I appreciated the transparency. But at the same time, I feel like there was maybe it just wasn't as big of a deal inside Hallis. I don't know if I'm completely wrong or like the experience that I've had is different than that. But I mean, I think these guys are professionals and they know how to conduct themselves as such too.
Yeah, I think too that part of the reason you have an agent is that they have the awkward conversations that the teams have to have that you don't want to be privy to. You want somebody in your ear being like, they love you, but we're working on it. It's business. He's doing it face to face. So then, you have to hear. It's like going to a parent-teacher conference. Like your teacher.
You're the student.
You know what? Yeah, you're the student. You're like, God, I didn't realize I was that big of a – like I didn't realize I was doing all these things wrong. But no, when it's just your parents, they come and you're doing great. One thing you might want to work on is, not acting up in class or whatever it is. Roquan had to hear everything. And I think that's where it sounds disrespectful, because when you hear it from people, and I have friends who played baseball who went through arbitration hearings, and they're like, the things that teams would say about you, you're like, I thought I was pretty good. I was an all-star. And they were talking to me like I was a 200 hitter. Like it is something different, but hopefully, I just hope that they can put it all behind them. What do you think though? Do you think, Jarrett, let me ask, do you think this is something where it's like, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to prove myself. I'm going to have the season of my career. Or do you think that he has a year where you're like, gosh, is he even trying?
Injury risk worth it too.
Yeah, I think it's tough because I've always been on the side of the players and understanding 100%. where they're coming from, because I mean he wants to be extended, and rightfully so. I mean, it's rare, especially when you're in the NFL, regardless of what team you're on, to say that you are arguably, if not the best player on the roster. Like, you should be paid as such, right? But
yeah.
I also understand where this new regime was coming from as well. They're coming into something new. They have a lot of holes that they need to fill, and they've already showed that they weren't coming in handing out money to anybody. I mean, they kind of made that clear. But I mean, and when you're a guy that is leading your team in tackles and Mr. All World, just doing everything. I mean, this dude, when any player that goes to SEC school like Georgia, like, I know you're a baller, man. Like, as soon as the Bears got this, I was like, dude, this dude is a straight baller, man. But I also understand where Poles was coming from. He was like, yes, we didn't draft you. We know what you're all about. We didn't draft you. We want you to show what you can do. And that, I think it is tough. And both you guys said everything that I was thinking. So I'm going to flip it a little bit. I really do think that in this system that, he could be like Shaq Leonard. He could find a way. Everybody knocks Roquan on not making those those flash plays, they want to call it here in Chicago all the time, the forced fumbles and all that stuff. I think with Alan Williams and way that this hits philosophy is kind of taken inside of that locker room on the defensive side of the ball, it's like a wave that's coming in. The intensity, the way that you play, you run to the football. To me, that's what Roquan is all about. He's one of these guys that, like my favorite rapper, Lil Wayne, one of his mixtape albums, he's got no ceiling. You know what I mean? When it comes to how good.
Oh my God, I didn't know you were a Wayne head. Heck yeah.
How good he could actually be. So if he can stay healthy, maybe this is an opportunity for them to go, yo, he's going to bet on himself like he talked about. He's going to play within the system, learn it, play at the best of his ability, make those flash plays. And then guess what? Then it's undeniable. It's undeniable because a lot of people, they talk about Shaq Leonard. They don't think that he should be paid more than him, like in this playing in this defense. I get that. That's a valuable argument. But this dude has no ceiling. So he could actually be that good. And that's what I'm thinking. He's going to stay healthy. I believe he's going to blow the doors off this season. And I think we're going to see him just playing football at first, not saying much. He's going to start feeling good about hopefully this relationship and they can mend this thing a little bit because he's playing so well and they're doing the things that they need to, that he's eventually going to get the money that he's hoping for.
And I want to ask anybody who, if you're enjoying the show so far, please go into the comment section, write sick right there in the comments. Let us know that you're having a good time with this conversation about the Bears. By the way, I will note that all three of us throughout the course of the Take It to the Ranks over the last couple of weeks, we've all nailed the Shaq Leonard thing. Not one of us has been tripped up. We're so good. Like I'm impressed. Like I'm bringing you in. I'm like, yeah, like we've all done it. We've all done really well. But that's the thing. I want to see it. Like we'll see what Shaq Leonard does this year. He's great. He's going to go out there and do his thing. But I've been really impressed with the Bears' overall demeanor. I love the fact that they're getting their hands up, getting in the way of the quarterback. They're not committing penalties, regardless of how well everybody thinks they are. If they have enough talent to compete, I think the play, like just the crispness of the play, just seems so much different than what we saw last year.
Yeah, man, because Matt Eberflus is holding cats accountable, man. You can't. This ain't the Wild Wild West no more, where you can run and do whatever you want to, and the vets getting this and that. Nah. The fact that your head coach is grading every single player after every single game, counting the loafs, this and that, like you don't want to be that guy. And he set that tempo from right at the beginning. People thought he was crazy. They thought he was crazy. I still remember like listening to people talking. I was like, holy cow. And I haven't had the pleasure yet because I'm always in studio to go out to go in a training camp this year. But I'm going to go to some practices. But watching the film, hold up, just listen. I can still do my listen. I still do my job. I know. Listen, I'm going to make it. It's hard when your last show every single night ends at 11 o'clock. So it's a long day. But I'm going to make it happen. But listen. The fact is like I was watching all the film and the stuff that we put onto our air here at WGN. And you can see it from the defensive side of the ball. The ball was like at the 40-yard line, and next thing you know, a ball is hiking, and you see all the defensive players running to the back end of the end zone. And I was like, okay, something's different here because, man, the game is muscle memory. Like, that's how good players become good players. And I'm going to go back to the U just for a second to tell people this story because this is where I always think about stuff like this. Ed Reed, when he was in Baltimore early in his career, came back to Miami, had this nice penthouse overlooking Biscayne Bay, marble floors, huge TV. We went over to say what's up to him, about to go out that night. And I look and I go to turn on the TV and I'm like, and it's static. And I'm like, bro, you thought you just got paid a couple mil, dude. You ain't got no cable or nothing. He said, nah. And I looked to the side of the TV and it was all DVDs. And I walked up close and I started looking at them and it was cut downs of like Peyton Manning, of Tom Brady, like by downs, down in like 3rd and long and what they were going to do. He was like, yeah, I don't watch TV. I watch film. So because he can mentally in his mind know what's going to happen on 3rd and 8 and what those quarterbacks like to do, so he can stop thinking about it. He already knows what they're going to do. He can vision it already, so he can let his athleticism take over and go make plays. And that's one thing that made him so good. It's all about how many times you can do stuff, how many times you can see stuff and do it correctly, make some mistakes, kind of manage those mistakes, get over those mistakes, and then do it over. And I was watching that, and you see it on the defensive side of the ball, especially in both preseason games. You see guys going out there, making plays, running after the football. That when you're putting all hats on a football, that's when you create turnovers, you create fumbles, and good things happen when you run to the football. So on the defensive side of the ball, it's evident that they have an opportunity to keep growing. That defensive line has to. That's what you don't win. You don't go to the playoffs. You don't win Super Bowls unless you can dominate on both sides of the line of scrimmage, on the offense and defensive line. So I want to see that nastiness from that offensive line as well this season. And so that's what gets me excited about a guy like Tevin Jenkins, because when you flip on this film from college, that he looks like a bouncer in Coral Gables throwing people out of Coconut Grove at the sandbar. Get out of here! Like, I want to see him have that same control rage on the football field and prove himself, because that young man, hey, he's got talent. He truly has talent. It's just there's so much noise going around on the outside of talking about, what Adam Schefter's talking about and all this other stuff. Yeah. That he's never had a real opportunity to really hone in and get an opportunity to play. And watching him at right guard the other night, man, it seems like a good fit for him there, man, because that's a position that I really think he could thrive at. And to me, it was fun watching him.
Yeah, real quick too, there was something that stuck with me from one of the Bears assistants used to be at the Bucs, and so I caught up with him at practice one day when I was there, and I asked him, I was like, how is Eberflus being received? How does the team like him? What's his coaching style? Like, I wanted to know what it was like. And he was like, man, you know what? He's like, these guys are just going to love playing for him because of the energy he brings and the accountability that he brings. But he's one of those guys that can get his players to rally around him and to play for him. And we even heard Al-Qadim Muhammad say it in the pressers afterwards, where he was like, honestly, because he knew Eberflus as the defensive coordinator with the Colts too. And he's like, honestly, he's a little less intense as a head coach, but he's like, the easiest way to piss him off is to not give effort and to not get to the ball on defense. And he's like, if you don't do those things, he will get on your ass and he will fire everyone else up around you. And I'm like, wow, I love hearing that. But he was one of my friends could say was, or the Bears assistant could say was just, he's going to be that guy that is going to get the locker room to play for him. And I loved hearing that.
I had a conversation, I think it was it Kenny Moore from Kenny Moore, who played for him in Indianapolis. He was a Walter Payton Man of the Year award nominee for the Colts. So I got a chance out in LA to really kind of hang out with him and talk with him at a couple events. And that's what he said, man. He was like, Jarrett, dude, this dude is no joke. Like, you better not be giving up on plays. Yep. You will get called out in meetings. I was like, dang, man, like, accountability, man. We need that in Chi-Town, man. Like, yeah, we need that. And then same thing, Frank, we were at NFL Honors, and I'm backstage, and I'm standing next to Commissioner Goodell, and we're about to walk out onto out for the with all of the nominees. And next thing you know, Aaron Jones walks up, and he's like talking. He's got his shades on, and him and the commissioner were talking, and I had to cut him off because we had like a minute. I was like, yo, Commish, I got to talk to him. I said, AJ, what's up, man? I'm Jarrett Payton. He's like, what's up, man? What's up? I said, man, tell me something about Luke Getsy. He was like, yeah, y'all going to love Getsy, man. Like, we miss him. We're going to miss him, but you guys are going to love him. I'm telling you, a great offensive mind. And those are two dudes that I respect, man. Two dudes that I respect. So for me, that's why I felt good about where we're at right now with both of those two pickups and those two hires.
Yeah, that was one of the things. I ran into you that night at NFL Honors. I also ran into a number of members of the Green Bay Packers who did not seem to be thrilled to be in my One of the defensive players was kind of having a laugh with me because I was standing there with James Jones. So I get a little shielded because James is there with me. So it's like, okay, well, if James is hanging out with him, he can't truly be that awful. But I knew that the eyebrows of that little coat, the LaFleur's eyebrows just were furrowed every time I walked by. So it was actually a good feeling. But I do want to get an opportunity to some of the fans. I know questions have been submitted. I'm sorry, Sammy. We're having too much fun, but I want to make sure the fans, we love hearing from the fans. Why don't we bring out a couple of questions? So, Sammy, what do we got? And love Bears all. This is a question for Jarrett. How do you feel about the Bears moving out of Soldier Field? I know you were young, but you must have incredible memories of your dad playing there. Yeah, how do you feel about that?
Man, I'm always honest, man. Like, it is what it is. I love Soldier Field to death. I truly do. It has so much history, and saw a lot of unbelievable games there. Right, I saw my dad break Jim Brown's record there. I was there I've been there for multiple playoff games. It's just crazy to think about. I had my wedding reception inside at Soldier Field. Right. Listen to this. Hold up. Virginia McCaskey came to my wedding reception. We were trying to take pictures outside, and they weren't going to turn it on because it was late, and they weren't going to turn on the lights. And Virginia McCaskey said, turn on those lights. And they turned them on so we could take pictures. She is in my wedding photos. How great. Mama Bear, dude. All right. I love that place. But I am also born and raised till I was 4 years old in Arlington Heights.
Yeah.
My dad ran the hill in Arlington Heights.
Say that's where the hill is, yeah.
I went to high school at St. Viator High School in Arlington Heights. We have a lot of history in the AH. And knowing what that place looks like and the site of the track, man, I think it's inevitable that the Bears have to decide to make a move, man. I mean, when you look at those 4 values that came out yesterday that we were talking on my show, $5.8 billion, you don't own your stadium. My dad always told me when I was growing up that, man, don't be buying cars, buy a house, buy land, buy a house and land, son. So that's what I did, because you own that, man. And then you figure out what you want to do with that. And like, I think that's where the Bears are. They're renting right now, and I think I think it's tough. And so if the Bears decided that they were going to move to Arlington Heights, I'm all for it for them. I'll watch them wherever they play. It doesn't matter to me. But if they told me that they told the fans, like, listen, we're making the move, I would support them in making the move.
Yeah, you're hurting Carmi V's feelings because I know she
She
loves the waterfront. Everybody loves the waterfront.
It's so
It is, but let's look for the fans, though. I mean, rarely do I go in and hang out. I've only tailgated with walking through the tailgate. I've never gone to a game, tailgated, and gone into a game. When I go for work, I normally park and then Walter Lightning go right up, past my dad's statue. What up, Pops? Go inside, and I'm right in. But for the fans, I've always hear fans that go there, season ticket holders that have a tough time with, tailgating. It is hard. So when you're thinking about long term, that's what the game is for. It's for the fans that love to come, that put their blood, sweat, and tears in this organization every single day. And what's going to be best for them? What's going to be best for this organization long term? To me, that's what's most important.
Yeah, it came with the caveat too that the thing that was missing from that proposal that Lori Lightfoot put out was I need more accessibility in and out of the stadium. I need something I need another L stop. I need you to, make a stop that's right outside Soldier Field so that museum campus in general, there's so much over there, but that's still not incredibly easy to get to, even if you're already in the city. So I was like, if you did all those things though, I would like to see it stay. Because it is so beautiful. It's such a historic venue, and I love it's awesome. But I get it. And also, I don't think that there's any merit to the Bears not actually playing in Chicago. There's plenty of teams that don't play in the city that they rep. It's no big deal.
The Super Bowl champions don't do that. They're playing in Inglewood. It's the same.
I know.
If you go and you build a new train station from O'Hare to Arlington Heights, the orange and blue line, we'll call it. And it's going to dump you off there with a huge complex where there's a Bears Hall of Fame. There's like 4 hotels. There's a
restaurants,
big entertainment complex, and a stadium. Nobody's going to care. Nobody will miss the lake. And I'll remember. I'll tell you another one of my dad's laments, because he wanted the dome when they redid the stadium. He wanted a dome, and I'm like, what about fair weather? He's like, let me tell you something about fair weather. It ended in 1988 when that soft-ass 49ers team came in here, whooped us in the playoff. I'm like, okay. Now I got him started on another one of his stories. But sorry, Sammy. I know we've been fast and loose with the language, but listen.
Sorry.
That was a quote. That was a quote from my father.
I'm sorry.
No, I said it. But how about another question though, Sammy? I know we didn't do a great job with the questions, but listen, we've had fun. This has been a good one. Rick Reuter, from what I've seen so far, it appears a lot of pass pro problems are due to the running backs missing blocks. Is this Justin not setting protection properly, or just blown blocks by the running backs? I know that Herbert that was difficult. I saw Herbert whiff on one, and I called that out. But what do you think? Is that part of it?
Yeah, but we haven't seen David Montgomery. He's a totally different being. That's one of the things that I love about his game, that he's gotten better at over time. Khalil Herbert, definitely, that's one of the things that he knows he's got to get better at, and that only comes with time, and that comes with more reps. And I think that's tough. I think it's a combination of all that. It's the backs, it's the offensive line having communication issues as well, because we saw in that second preseason game in Seattle, there was times during that first drive where Justin was feeling a little bit of that pressure, and that's only going to get worse as you have more ones playing more time in games. So yes, you have to get better at pass protection. I don't worry about that with number 32 in the game. I think he's seen a lot so far, and the way that he talks about the game, he's very bright when it comes to pass protection.
I wonder if Tristan Ebner can do.
Sammy, oh yeah, Ebner. I forgot about him too. I mean, Tristan, he's working. I mean, for him, I think the best opportunity is for him to, be on special teams, do what he needs to do, get an opportunity here. We know how running backs can go down, right? It's one of those positions that's so tough. Reason why guys, teams don't want to pay that position anymore. It's devalued, but you need 3 backs going into a season to make sure that you're okay. And I think watching him, not only in the run game, but also in the passing game, Ebner reminds me of his running style just a little bit. Like there's one part of his step when I watch him that he's got some Matt Forte in him.
Oh, thank you. Bit. Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't wanted to say it. I like to say
it. He does. It's the way he goes through the hole sometimes with his hand, like the way that it's weird, but I see a little bit in there. So I kind of see what Ryan Poles sees in the young man. So hopefully, he'll get his opportunity.
There's a little bit of that glide in there. By the way, again, let's switch it up a little bit. If you're enjoying this now, type in the word sweetness in the comments. By the way, let's plug Roots of Fight. Neither one of us are wearing any of our Roots of Fight gear, but by the way, they have one of the best collections of Walter Payton gear that you can find anywhere. I should have thought of this ahead of time. I apologize to them, and as I hit them up for gear all the time. But Roots of Fight, be sure to check it out if you want some sick Bears jackets and things like that, or a pretty cool Bears jacket. Yeah, Walter Payton one. Wanted to give them a plug. I meant to have it with me, but I do want to see if we have time for one more question. I know you're at work and we're bothering you at work. I want to do one more question though, because the fans have been great. Even the usual suspects who come into the chat.
Oh man.
It would be interesting.
So I'm gonna give you. I don't know truly what his favorite food was. I mean, he loved eating steak. He loved all down like dishes. That's where he's from in Mississippi. But one thing that my dad truly loved. My dad loved candy. My dad sweetness was like the perfect nickname for him. And my dad's favorite candy was the banana Laffy Taffy.
That's my dad's favorite candy.
My mom used to buy the big buckets at Sam's Club. And crazy story before we get out of here, because I love this story. It makes me think of him. for years, you would walk down our stairs to go where he would watch TV, his TV room, and he would take the wrappers as he was eating them for years, and he would throw them into this vase that was like 6 foot high, so we could never see it. It was like huge. It used to be huge. No. It was on a stand, and he would throw them in there. He used it as his garbage can. When my dad passed away, and my mom was moving out of our house in Mudhank, we had to move that thing. We had to move the vase, and so we did, and me and my buddy CJ picked it up, and we started hearing the swishing around and stuff. I'm like, what is that? We pick it over up onto the carpet and move it over, and it was like thousands of wrappers sitting in there. So my dad had a sweet tooth and was sprayed in needles, and so he had a bunch of cavities for eating all the candy, and I literally had to go with him to the dentist and hold his hand if they had to give him a shot because he was terrified.
Oh my God, that's right. I've heard those stories about the needles.
Oh my God, incredible! That's hilarious. As tough as he was,
the greatest.
Field, like needles are what does it.
That's what it was.
Dude, you guys are awesome, man. I appreciate you guys for having me, man.
No. We want to thank you.
With us.
I know it's always an honor, and anytime I get to do your show as well, like it's always an honor to be in your presence and be around you. And you've been a great ambassador to your dad's legacy. And I know that millions of Chicago people around the world. What do we got here? One more. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Samuel Payton McKendry. Your dad. Yeah, I can't tell you enough how much
my nail lady's daughter is named after your dad, by the way. I swear to you.
That
her
right
daughter,
there
his name is Payton.
That right there.
And
there.
It's so incredible. Like I work with so many people who like they get like, and it's funny because a lot of Chicago people, like these kids that I work with, they're either Jordan or Peyton. And it's not, and you're like, oh, but it's not like, oh no, they always shake their head like, no, it's exactly what you think. It's Walter Payton or it's Michael Jordan or it's something like that. And it's one of the greatest legacies. And we appreciate everything you do. We appreciate you still being out there, being a part of the WGN family, going out there and crushing it. And thank you so much for being here today. And
take it to the rank, baby. Take it to the rank. Let's go.
We'll do it again really soon, but go get ready for your show. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you I'll see you on your show sometime.
Yeah, we will. Hey, listen, I just want to say both of you guys, you both are amazing. Shouts out to all the Bears fans, all the Rank fans out there to watch the podcast. We appreciate you guys for doing what you do. We're all a family here when it comes to Chicago Bears. So, any Bears fans, let's always come together, link up one another, get on each other's podcasts. That's what it's all about. We're the greatest family in football. So just enjoy each other. And like we always say, bear down, baby. Let's go.
Bear down. Thank you so much, Jarrett. There he goes. The great Jarrett Payton. Always an honor and a privilege. I still get, and I know, I still get a little emotional every time I think about it. Because I always think about my dad. And like, what would he think? Like, hey, I'm going to be talking to Walter Payton's son. We're kind of friends, like I saw him out in the wild at NFL Honors, and I thought, walked up, didn't have to be like, my name's Adam, good to meet, he knew exactly, he walked up to me, it was crazy.
I can't wait to tell my dad, quite honestly. My dad was from Philly, but he moved here for my mom in '84, so right before the Bears, had the Super Bowl. But like he talks about how Walter Payton was part of the reason that he converted to a Bears fan, like completely after seeing that the city just kind of explode for that championship team, and he talks about Walter Payton, and I just remember that being, I was born after the fact, but there was Walter Payton, we had a picture up in our house, and like just got like memorabilia. My dad's a big memorabilia guy, so like I was raised knowing exactly who Walter Payton was and how much he meant to this city, to the team, everything like that. So I can't wait to tell my dad that I was just on with Jarrett. I think he'll really appreciate that.
No, it's pretty amazing. And like he said, that there is still a sense of family amongst the Bears fans. And I like I know that I'm always made fun of for this because I seem like a shill, but I love the McCaskey family too. I think like there's something about it. There's something about being owned by a family still and having those roots. I hope that the
NFL family.
The NFL family. I think there's something very special about that. And I hate whenever people say sell the team or whatever. I'm an Angels fan too, as everybody knows. Artie Moreno looks like he's going to sell the Angels. Everybody's rejoicing. I would not feel that way. I hope the McCaskies hold on to it forever. They go to Arlington Heights and build a legacy that you can't deny and all that good stuff. But let me ask you real quick before we both go.
Okay.
What are we looking forward to in week 3? Are we expecting a lot of the starters to play? Are we going to see more Tevin Jenkins at right guard? What are you anticipating?
I would think that you would have more of the starters playing, because I think that that's kind of just the way that with these 3 preseason games now, that's kind of the way that everything has evolved. Like I think before, because you didn't have the bye week, to separate it, that you wouldn't play starters in the last game. But this, I feel like, is a ramp up. So you're going to probably see the most work from the starters this game. It is interesting to see Tevin Jenkins at that right guard spot. It seems like he's excelling on the interior there. And if that's where he fits, keep him there, and we'll see. I hope that they have the final offensive line iteration ready to go for this last game, but I guess we'll still see, because I just think that the constant shuffling around just isn't doing anything to help the offense get its rhythm, get its cadence, get all that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that's what we see. We see something that's pretty solidified. We see the same 5 guys for maybe the first quarter, maybe into the second quarter. I don't know how long that these guys will end up playing, but I would anticipate that all the starters will get a lot more work.
That would be my hope as well, and I hope we get a chance to see some extended looks at some of those guys as they start to solidify those positions. And, of course, we'll be talking more about that on Thursday. Ill will be joining us. We're going to do a little Fantasy Island as well as we get you ready for week 3 of the preseason. And she is Carmi V on Twitter and on Instagram. And follow her. Make sure you download the Draft Network podcast and listen to that. Even if you don't listen to it, just subscribe. Just have it drop into your inbox.
And just like it, rate it, subscribe to it.
Do all that cool stuff. But Carmen, thanks so much for being here. I thought this. I swear to you, like a lot of times I'll lie and be like, it flew by. Legitimately flew by. This was a fun night.
It was awesome. Thank you so much for bringing Jarrett onto that. It was so much fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, it was a good time. Thanks so much for being here. And so, you know what? Until next time, bear down. And Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.